Hello, these are my hands, this is my disembodied voice, I am Bay Mud, and here is some gear I've been bonding with. I recently did a live performance, so this is the synth rig I put together for that event. I thought it might be interesting to walk through the various items, why I chose them, how they're all connected, and some brief examples of how it all works together. Disclaimer off the top, I just do this for fun. I buy the gear myself. I like making noise, playing shows, recording stuff. And I find that making videos of the stuff that I own helps me understand it better or solidifies kind of the tricks I'm trying to learn, if that makes any sense. So hopefully you get something out of it. Maybe you make videos of a similar nature. I probably watch them. It's an ecosystem. Just doing it for fun. As I said off the top, this rig was put together for a recent live performance, and the idea there was to do a set around kind of ambient synth improv stuff. So I had a notebook with some starting points of ideas, whether they were chord progressions or just tricks I wanted to try and build out in front of a live audience. I'll intercut this video with some clips from the event so you get a sense of the vibe and how it all came together. Suffice it to say, I do work in other genres, especially with the Deluge or guitars or whatever. But for this event in particular and this rig, it was ambient synth kind of textures and atmospheres. So if that's not your jam, I get it, but maybe you would like this walkthrough anyway. Of course, we have to start with the Deluge. It's the brain of every setup I put together. I use it most often on its own. It's very feature rich, but for this event, I wanted to give it some friends to play with, so I had some knobs and things to reach for. But everything here is routed through the Deluge in a couple ways. Some USB MIDI being sent for start-stop and MIDI notes or whatever sequencing, but all the audio is going through this mixer, which we'll talk about in a moment, into the Deluge, then back out. So the Deluge can add master effects, resampling, it can do MIDI sequencing. I could add my own percussion and things in the Deluge itself. So basically the Deluge is the heart and soul, as always. Speaking of this little mixer, you may already be familiar with the Zoom L6 as it's making the rounds through a lot of videos right now. It's fairly new and people are excited about it. I just got mine right before the set I'm talking about, so it was pretty harrowing to figure out how to integrate quickly, but very rewarding as it's a very feature-rich little box. As I mentioned, all the audio outputs of the gear here go through the L6, then out auxiliary sends into the line-in of the Deluge before going back out to another channel in the L6 and beyond. For this video, in fact, this mic is actually on, going through a couple other things. You may hear the sound of my voice change a little bit as it's manipulated through some of the gear, but into the L6, just like everything else here, then out the USB-C connection into that phone, which is recording the video. So it's very practical in use as well. So everything's live going through the L6 right now for this video too. Moving on, you see the Yamaha Reface CP here, which is a recent addition as well. Just listen to that beautiful stereo tremolo and drive in your headphones. I hadn't planned on getting one of these. I always liked them, but I just didn't really figure I needed one. And then someone locally was selling one secondhand for a very good price. So I had to jump on it, of course, and then immediately fell in love. It's that classic kind of electric piano Rhodes Wurlitzer sound set that is just so inspiring to me, at least, and ended up becoming the kind of basis for a lot of what I did in the live set. It's really great as a MIDI controller with the Deluge, which we'll show later, and also the lead tones and things I just found very inspiring for chord progressions and starting points. Next up, we've got the modern Sounds Pluto, which is a synth I've already talked about, 2-voice, semi-modular. It's barely patched right now, just kind of an example to get things going for today, but there's a lot you can do with it. It's great for kind of filling in the gaps between other melodies and kind of taking chord progressions and building on them. Very interesting, happy accident machine with some ambient textures, so perfect for what I was doing in this particular live event. Of course, you can't hear it right now, and that's for two reasons. One, the Deluge isn't sending it anything. We have MIDI channel 9 here sending just the notes in the chord of A major. If I press play, you'll see the lights on the Pluto start going, but there's no audio. That's because it's currently muted in the L6. We're using scenes to control various parameters at once. So there are 3 scenes you have access to. And in this one, only the Yamaha and the mic are active. But if I switch to scene A, other things, it's just a way of kind of controlling a couple things at once without turning knobs really quickly. So a bunch of other things will become active, sends unmuted and things like that. So I'll press A and you'll hear the Pluto. So there you go. The Pluto currently set to kind of ambient textures. You know, one of the voices is more kind of elongated while the other is more staccato, and there's a reverb on it. That's just kind of an example starting point, really. But that's being fed notes from the Deluge in the key of A major, like I said. But as I mentioned a second ago, the Yamaha Reface CP is connected via USB MIDI to be the MIDI controller for the Deluge. Using a feature from the community firmware called MIDI Follow, it basically takes control of whatever clip is active. So in this case, I most recently looked at that MIDI clip for channel 9 to send to the Pluto. So whatever I play here will kind of feed into that clip without recording, just kind of taking over playing in the Pluto. So the Pluto, if I play a D major 7, for instance, you now hear the Pluto following along to the notes in D major 7. Let's do an E major 7. I like 7s, I don't know. There you go, it's following along in that. Back to A major 7. So you can see, hopefully, how that MIDI follow feature and these 3 devices integrated is pretty interesting. Like the Pluto is just going to follow me as I play my lead lines in the Yamaha. So mess around over here with the onboard effects and different melodies, and the Pluto is just going to follow along. Very useful, especially in a live ambient improv setting. So I should probably do a separate video on MIDI Follow, just because it's such a cool community feature that's taken me a while to wrap my head around, but I feel like it'd be very useful and hard to explain beyond what I just did without getting too deep. So we'll pause the Pluto for now so we can talk about the next item in the rig, which are the Patchblocks. They were given to me by a friend who had them sitting in the box for 10 years, never opened them, and thought maybe I would make better use of them. So I appreciate it, David. Thank you very much. Immediately, of course, I dropped everything, downloaded all the software that's available, and found a bunch of presets that are still out there. The company went under, but all the resources are still online. And you may hear there's a bit of a noise, a background noise right now. They are kind of lo-fi and a bit, and the whatever's loaded in there sometimes sneaks in even when it's not on. But that can add to the fun, especially in the context of what they are going to do, which is droning. So the white one here is set up with a drone in A major, which is why I've been sticking to A major chords, because this patch is in A major, so it'll make sense in a second. You can hear, as I get that going, hopefully you hear this kind of ominous drone. I'll dial it back a bit, some texture, some overdrive, some harmonics in the key of A major. And then this guy here is set up as a stereo tremolo. There you go. There's a bit of a softer, more of a sine wave. Back to triangle. Stereo, so it's a bit ping-ponging in your ear now if you have headphones on. Back to mono. But hopefully you can hear how that could be useful for setting up sort of a bass, a bit of a noisy, gritty kind of bass drone to get you going, to play over. Get your kind of effects. And then you bring back the Pluto. Now you've got your Reface, your Pluto. And you can already see how the ambient live improv stuff could have come together with this setup. And the final piece of the puzzle that's been staring us right in the face the whole time is this probably slightly out of focus simple dynamic mic. I've been using it today to talk through for this video, but I also have been bringing it live as a way of sort of engaging the audience more between songs. Engagement. We're engaging the audience. I'm going to look each one of you in the eye. I'd stop when I get nervous. And or trying to get out of my comfort zone and add some vocals, whether that's singing or lyric or spoken word ideas, just anything to kind of push a little further and add another layer to that kind of ambient stuff. So to facilitate that, the dynamic mic is going through the Templo Pocket Comp. So if I happen to speak more loudly, you'll see it engaged the gain reduction and saved your ears there. But it also has this large output gain knob, so I can dial it up or back depending, and that kind of helps me have easy access if, say, I'm feeding back or I want it just a little louder, but I don't want to upset the scenes I've got set up in the L6 and have to change it in 3 places because I've got 3 different scenes set up. I have this knob easily accessible right in front of me. And then, of course, the trusty Zoom MS-70CDR, probably one of the oldest devices that I own, next to the Deluge, which I've had for about 6 or 7 years. I've had the Zoom for a very long time. And in recent years, you've been able to add other patches from different Zoom pedals to this. So I've got a distortion on my vocals if I want. So right now, I can engage this, and now my vocals are more lo-fi with a bit of a tremolo reverb on it as well. And there's been a noise gate on the whole time that's been blocking out some of the noise that this setup generates as I'm trying to be far away from the microphone while cranking it up to not get my head in the shot. So there you go. I can now have some effects on my vocal so that I don't feel as self-conscious and naked as I try to get out of my comfort zone and add some vocals to more ambient stuff. So that's the setup basically. The stand is kind of wobbly and I usually use a different mic stand, but for the sake of the video, this is what we've got. But that's kind of the walkthrough. Now it's really about kind of putting it all together. So if I go back to pressing play on the Deluge, then go back to scene A on the L6, that will re-engage our Pluto and our drone. And now put my vocal effects on. Let's do a live loop in the Deluge. I've got the foot switch down here. Hopefully you can see that. So when I trigger this, now we're looping. Now we're looping. Now I've just gone back to scene 6. So these items are muted, but we've still got our looping. And the vocals would be a little bit louder than that under normal circumstances. I've just got it dialed in more for talking on the video now than for performing. I'd usually get right up into the mic, but like I said, I don't want my head just taking over the whole shot here. But you have some options now. Hopefully you can see just some quick manipulations of this live loop. You can kind of see the textures you can build. So now if I re-engage our other items, hopefully you see how this kind of could all come together in a fun sort of ambient set. So that's about it for me. I'm going to just kind of mess around. Hopefully you got something out of this video and appreciate kind of the setup and some of the techniques I'm trying. Maybe you have suggestions of what other pieces might fill in this puzzle a little bit, or maybe you have a live rig you're using that you're really happy about and want to share it with me. I'd happily watch your video on that. In any case, I hope you got something out of this. Leave a comment or not, whatever you want to do. I'm just going to mess around as we fade out. So thanks for sticking around.